The greatest game of all time is getting a remake? Maybe. It's complicated. Hey, it's Just the Gems. I'm Brandon, and I've been replaying Chrono Trigger. That's not unusual. I've replayed Chrono Trigger probably 100 times over the years, and I don't even think I'm exaggerating. It's been my favorite JRPG, my favorite video game, since it came out back in 1995. This time, I'm replaying it at the behest of the members of my podcast, the JRPG Pursuit. They chose it for our spoiler cast this quarter, and I barely need an excuse to replay this game anyway, but here we are. But this is the first time I've replayed it since I started seriously thinking about games from the perspective of criticism, and I think Chrono Trigger deserves the same critical eye that I give to every game I play nowadays. So I wanted to talk about why I think Chrono Trigger holds up in a way that so few games of its vintage are able to, and also about how it could be drastically improved via a remake, which feels almost inevitable at this point. Let's get into it. One of the greatest strengths of Chrono Trigger is its pacing. One solid start-to-finish playthrough of the game might only take you 15 hours. By modern standards, that feels impossibly short for a AAA big-budget Square Enix game. And even by the standards of the day, it was on the shorter side. It more than makes up for its brevity by having basically no fluff, though. From the get-go, this game has its pedal to the metal, and it barely lets up even once. Now, of course, you as the player can slow down when you want to. You can go out and grind in Guardia Forest, or talk to every NPC, or play every minigame at the Millennial Fair. But if you're intent on moving the story forward, the game does not put up any stupid barriers. Part of that is the fairness of the combat. People have said that the game is on the easy side, and I don't disagree with that, but I think it mostly just feels that way because of how well balanced it is. If you have a decent grasp of the combat, you shouldn't ever feel underleveled or like a boss fight is straight up unfair. You're not going to get stuck banging your head against an unbeatable boss. As long as you don't run from every battle along the way, your level is perfectly fine for taking on each new challenge. And even though we're dealing with a story about time travel with a bunch of freedom to visit different eras in time, the story does a good job of making sure it's always clear where you need to go and what you need to do. In an era where it was still sort of the norm to have poor localizations that do a terrible job of directing you where to go next, the Woolsey localization of Chrono Trigger gave us everything we needed and then some. The modern localization done for the DS version and then subsequently used in the mobile and PC versions is very good as well, though as an aside, I will say it's lacking the same soul that the original had. It's serviceable, it's good, but the original will always shine. Anyway, point is, the waypoints in the plot are signposted very well, and despite the subject matter, it's always easy to get from point A to point B. More games should strive for the pacing of Chrono Trigger. A 15-hour game can still be a good game. Of course, Chrono Trigger offered perhaps the most inherent replay value of any JRPG of its time by nature of its multiple endings, even if most of those were either simple variations or gag endings. It's a model that seemed to be abandoned as soon as we hit the era of mass storage, first with CDs, then DVDs, and now Blu-rays. It could be that the restrictions put in place by the hardware forced the developers' hands, and maybe they would have made Chrono Trigger a 90-hour experience if they could have. Regardless of how it ended up with its tight pacing, it's one of the game's greatest strengths, and I'm really glad for it. The remake succeeds here by not trying to fix what isn't broken. There's an inclination among developers nowadays to put a bunch of bloat in their games, because a lot of people have the misguided idea that more gameplay time automatically equals better value for money. That's absurd on its face, and it's even more ridiculous the deeper you dig into that mentally. Chrono Trigger's pacing is superb, and for those that want more playtime, there's a ton of replay value. This game pioneered the concept of New Game Plus, and I know I've personally gone through dozens and dozens of New Game Plus loops over the years. Don't fundamentally change the plot. Don't add a bunch of fetch questy nonsense. The DS version added the Lost Sanctum, a series of bonus dungeons with exactly that sort of fetch questy nonsense I'm talking about. Axe it. It doesn't belong in Chrono Trigger. Let's make Chrono Trigger and any subsequent series that grows from it the anti-bloat franchise. Tightly paced 15-hour JRPG experiences with peak story and characters and combat. It's possible, and the world needs more games exactly like that. A common joke you'll hear online, or at least one you would hear online back before attention spans shrank to nothing and no meme or goof lasts longer than a week, is that Chrono Trigger is the best Final Fantasy. And in some very real ways, that's true. Chrono Trigger is perhaps the best rendition of the active time battle system that Final Fantasy created and popularized way back with Final Fantasy IV. It treats combat not as a series of turns that each of your characters and enemies take, but instead as an active skirmish that you as the player have to manage. They emphasize this with combo attacks. By waiting until multiple characters' ATB meters are filled up, you can have them combine their special techniques into double or triple techniques that do a ton more damage or cause other special effects. Each one of these combination techniques is bespoke too. It was never as simple as having, say, 2 characters cast their basic spells at the same time. The game used some pretty novel special effects to make sure each technique was unique and awesome. Outside of the mechanics, the most amazing aspect of the combat in Chrono Trigger is that each and every combat encounter is handcrafted. There are no random battles, nor are there even enemies wandering the screen that lead you into a spatially separate battle arena. Combat occurs right on the screen, something that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it had ever been done before, at least not on consoles and not in this specific genre. This required every single battle to be designed by the developers. They couldn't rely on random battles. They couldn't just decide on a selection of enemies to appear in each region of the game and then let the RNG take it from there. They had to build them all. That leads to a ton of interesting and sometimes even funny encounters. The enemies are all so lively. Some of them are playing around, some of them are clearly up to no good, and many of them you can just easily avoid if you want to. It's next level design that we really didn't see anything like for quite some time. Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen a game with this level of attention to detail in the combat scenarios since. It's a real unicorn of a game. So what needs to change in the remake? Not much. Just speed it up a bit. Sure, you can increase the battle speed via the menu in the original game, but it still has that 16-bit feel where it's a little stiff, a little slow. There have been a lot of innovations in turn-based combat in the intervening 30 years, so if they incorporate some of those into the remake, you'll have the perfect, easy-to-grasp combat system. Will it be too easy for some people? Sure. If they want to include a hard mode for people craving that sort of challenge, I don't object to that at all. But there isn't much about the core gameplay that needs to be changed. Double and triple text define this game's creativity, and the relative lack of them in Chrono Cross was one of that game's biggest downsides. They can make sure that that doesn't happen again by even further emphasizing them. Create even more combo text if you want, guys. I think we'll all be happy about that. I already mentioned how the localization does a good job of making sure you never get stuck in the plot, but the story itself is masterfully told. A lot of time travel stories can sort of disappear up their own, bootay, like with how convoluted they are. But Chrono Trigger keeps things straightforward and easy to comprehend. That means you're not getting a Rian Johnson-esque Looper sort of experience, but that's okay. It's a simple plot that grows and becomes more complex as it progresses, all at a pace that lets you fully keep your head above water the entire time. Chrono Trigger's simple cause and effect time travel storytelling could be enhanced in some ways that don't necessarily impact the overall plot. For example, give us more character interactions from the main cast. The few scenes of pure dialogue that we do get are great, and they really let our imaginations run wild when we were kids, imagining all the conversations the characters might be having as they make their way through the story. But now there's an opportunity to give us even more. Let's really get a chance to see the friendships develop. Let's have some interpersonal conflicts, some outright fights even. I don't think we lose anything by fleshing these characters out. So long as the original game is available to play, which admittedly is something Square Enix should work hard to make happen, honestly, they should include it in the remake, straight up. But so long as it's there, then go ahead and flex your creative muscles. The campfire scene in the original is one of the most iconic scenes in 16-bit JRPGs. Give us a ton more scenes like that to enjoy. Speaking of the characters, there's another change that I'd like to see that I think will make the story even better. I'd love for the characters to feel like they have a stronger reason for getting involved in this whole mess. Honestly, the character with the actual strongest connection to the plot is Magus. He legit has a reason to be there and be doing the things he's doing. Chrono, Marl, Luca, Isla, Frog, they could just go home, live their lives, and nothing bad would happen. Robo, you could argue, would probably be better suited to a world that's a little less destroyed-ish than the one you find him in, but it doesn't really seem to bother him. He's just sleeping. Okay, I'm being a little facetious, and yeah, I get that it's just a fun adventure, and so naturally the three teenagers want to jump around through time and save the world. But giving them a stronger and more natural plot motivation for risking their lives won't lessen that sense of fun. At least it doesn't have to. A strong sense of justice, of wanting to save the world, can definitely still be a part of their motivation, but I'd like to see more. We could get that from better and more frequent character interactions, so it's kind of killing two birds with one stone. And if we want to kill a third bird, a bird that absolutely deserves to get the absolute hell crushed out of it with a big old rock, let's ditch the silent protagonist thing already. This is the weakest part of the Chrono Trigger story by far. Chrono is more than a Dragon Quest protagonist. He needs to make important decisions throughout the story, and he is beloved and vital to the people around him. Making him silent with almost no player choice is a travesty of design and writing. I know it's Yuji Horí's thing, but it's time to move past that. He was wrong about silent protagonists then, and if he still wants to do it now, then he's wrong about it now. A silent protagonist only really works when player agency is important and actually matters to the story. A dumb game piece that you move around the game could be okay if that dumb game piece isn't vital to the plot. But Chrono is vital to the plot, and the plot suffers by not having any real contribution from him. I know this is the least likely thing to be fixed because of how much esteem Yuji Horii is held in and how I can imagine no one would want to override him. But he started to seemingly have a change of heart about silent protagonists, some of the things he said in recent years. Maybe it'll never happen in Dragon Quest, but there's a chance it could happen here, and I'm praying it does. Oh man, if only you could have been there in 1995 when this game came out. I mean, probably many of you were, but I'm just talking to the younger people right now, or the people who didn't get into gaming until later. This was the pinnacle of the art form back then. Graphically, this game presented itself as something out of the future. Incredibly gorgeous sprite work, astonishing, beautiful maps and backgrounds, gigantic bosses. We had never seen anything quite like it to that point. And shortly after this, so much of the industry, including Square themselves, turned to janky polygons. So for ages, this was the best and purest expression of pixel art the world had seen. And the music. Yasunori Mitsuda put himself in the hospital composing one of the finest soundtracks video games had ever known. It may have been the best ever at the time it came out, and it wasn't surpassed until he did it himself with the sequel, Chrono Cross. This game is an aesthetic masterpiece, and it's the thing I'm most afraid of seeing change in the remake. How on earth could they change the aesthetics to appeal to a modern audience? Most people are going to chime in and say HD 2D, because that's the new hotness when it comes to Square Enix. I mean, we're getting a freaking Final Fantasy in HD 2D. Like it or not, HD 2D is here to stay. But is it really the best way to represent Chrono Trigger? I honestly don't think it is. We have to think about what the original game was trying to achieve with its art. The characters and creatures were designed by Akira Toriyama, and the sprite work does a fantastic job of bringing his designs to life in a way that's faithful. If the goal of the sprite work was to faithfully recreate Toriyama's designs, then I think there are some better ways of bringing Chrono Trigger into the modern world than HD 2D. The two options I can think of are a fully 3D game in the style of Dragon Quest XI, or a fully hand-drawn game in the style of Vivarium. Let's talk about both of those. I was initially really drawn to the idea of a 3D remake all the way back in the early 2000s when I saw the fan project Chrono Resurrection. You'll have to forgive this footage, it's from the ancient times when internet videos were the size of postage stamps. This isn't perfect by any means, but it really made me want Chrono Trigger in a form similar to this. Playing Dragon Quest XI basically cemented that feeling for me. That's what Toriyama's art should look like. A remake of Chrono Trigger following that path would be a winner for sure. Again, not to get rid of the pixel art, keep the original around, it's beautiful in its own way, but let's mix it up for the remake. The other option might be even better, but it might also be so financially taxing that it would never happen. Hand animating everything, every frame of animation, every scene, you can imagine how much work and money that would be. But my God, it would be amazing. It's frustrating because I know that it's possible, but I also know it's never gonna happen. So given the two options, 3D in the style of Dragon Quest makes the most sense for a Chrono Trigger remake. Keep that deep focus HD 2D camera away from this game. Let's do it upright. Oh, the music can stay the same. It's God tier. If you want to make it fully orchestrated, that's fine, but up to you, Square. Square Enix has to decide whether or not they want Chrono Trigger to continue as a series. If they do they want Chrono Cross to be considered a canon part of that series? How they answer that question should shape any additions or changes they make to Chrono Trigger's story and how they present and market the remake. They already made some pretty significant tweaks with the Nintendo DS version, adding bonus dungeons with epilogue content that better connects Chrono Trigger to Chrono Cross, including a new final boss and an entirely new ending. That's great, and if Chrono Cross is going to be a part of this going forward, then they should lean into that. That said, if they wanted to take things in a different direction, I wouldn't be too sad about it. Don't get me wrong, I love the writing of Masato Kato. His contributions to Chrono Trigger and Xenogears and so many other games are among my favorite parts of those titles. He's fantastic. However, the implications of the events in Chrono Cross are just so dark. If Square Enix wants to push the series down the Chrono Cross path, then I hope they actually continue the story and allow us to redeem some of the awful things that happen off-screen in that game. The series can explore other science fiction-y phenomena like Cross did with parallel universes, but I think time travel should be a key aspect of the stories. It's weird they kept the Chrono part of the title for Cross, if you think about it, as if Chrono is the series, when it just as easily could have been Trigger. But that's splitting hairs about things that aren't important. What is important is that they present the remake as a new beginning for this franchise. It had a strange birth, coming from so many significant creators at the time, and it happened to release right at the turning point of video game technology. And I'm sure there are a multitude of other reasons the series faded out so quickly. Still, if the remake is put together right, it could set us up for an entirely new pillar of Square Enix to enjoy for decades to come. How does the remake do this, aside from just creating a kick-ass experience from start to finish? They could take a page from Monolith Soft and give us an extended epilogue, a sort of mini-sequel in and of itself that could lay the groundwork for whatever's next. If whatever's next happens to be a remake of Chrono Cross, that's cool. Though I imagine Chrono Cross would be forever relegated to the status of spin-off and not sequel if the series picks back up again. The reasons I think that could be an entire video of its own, so let me know down in the comments if you'd like to see that. I admire Chrono Cross. I think there's a bunch of things about it that are amazing, but I don't really like it. It's hard to explain, but I'm sure many of you out there can relate. Those are my thoughts right now. What about you all? How do you think a remake could improve Chrono Trigger? I know many of you are going to be firmly in the camp of no changes, it's impossible to make it better, and that's fine, but I'm really asking more as a thought experiment. Even if you're a hardline no remaker, use your imagination and give us exactly what it would take to make it work in your mind. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Later.